In the early morning, Tang San returned from the mountain, feeling refreshed, to make breakfast. During these days, due to using the purple demon eyes every day and continuous practice in the morning, his purple demon eyes had made significant progress compared to before. He could now see the subtle movements of mosquitoes flapping their wings within 10 meters. If it weren't for the bottleneck in the Shen Tian skill, Tang San believed that his progress in other aspects would be even greater. Forging a piece of raw iron into the size of a fist, which seemed impossible at first, had already been accomplished by Tang San half a month ago. Tang Hao taught him the method of leveraging force with the forging hammer, and he could now swing 24 consecutive strikes, each one accurate and controlled. Although Tang Hao never praised him, judging from the occasional satisfied look in his father's eyes, Tang San knew that his hammer technique had achieved some success. However, to further progress, continuous practice was necessary. About to enter the house, Tang San lightly touched his wrist, revealing a satisfied smile on his face. On his wrist was the first product he made since coming to this world, and he had completed all the steps by himself. It was a sleeve arrow. For the former Tang sect, sleeve arrows were the most common type of concealed weapons. The key to making sleeve arrows lay in the strength of the spring and the intricacy of the design. Like the sleeve arrow Tang San made, it even had a safety device, ensuring no accidental injuries. A set of sleeve arrows typically consisted of 3 arrows and a sleeve tube. The sleeve arrow he carried now was no exception. The material for this sleeve arrow was the iron block he had spent nearly 100 days forging. When Tang San completed the task given by Tang Hao and forged the raw iron into a fist-sized piece, he was surprised to find that the iron block, which was originally full of impurities, had turned into a piece of pure iron. In the previous life, not even the best master of the Tang sect could use such a method to forge ordinary raw iron into pure iron. But in this world, it became a reality. This was an incredibly unbelievable feat. The sleeve arrow on Tang San's wrist was made from this pure iron. Completing the construction of the sleeve arrow, including the 3 4-inch arrows, used up all the pure iron. In terms of forging, Tang San was far inferior to Tang Hao. However, in terms of crafting clever concealed weapons, not even Tang Hao, perhaps no one on the entire Dolua continent, could match him, this genius of the Tang sect's outer disciples. Ordinary sleeve arrows had a range of about 15 meters, but the sleeve arrows Tang San made could maintain an effective attack distance of up to 30 meters. The so-called effective attack distance referred to the straight-line distance after the sleeve arrow was fired, which was the distance that could maintain sufficient lethality. Although this sleeve arrow set had only 3 arrows, it was extremely sophisticated. Each arrow had 3 blood grooves. If it weren't for the small number, Tang San had considered adding barbs to the arrowheads. The small 4-pointed tail wings at the back ensured the smooth flight of the sleeve arrow. The conical arrowhead had spiral traces, providing greater penetrating power when the arrow was fired. For the design and manufacturing of concealed weapons, Tang San always pursued perfection, even if it was just a set of ordinary sleeve arrows. Tang San knew that he was still young, and the bottleneck in the Shen Tian skill hadn't been overcome yet. If he were an ordinary person, it wouldn't matter, but if he encountered a soul master like Pixel Cloudwave again, who could use martial soul abilities, his strength would be far from enough. However, with this set of sleeve arrows, it would be different. Tang San was confident that with it, as long as he faced soul masters whose strength wasn't too strong, he would have a way to deal with them. Tang Sect's Shen Tian Treasure Record, General Outline, Article 2, What is a concealed weapon? Using it in secret to defeat the enemy is the special weapon of concealed weapons. If the enemy knows you're going to use it, then it's no longer a concealed weapon but a visible one. Tang San certainly wouldn't let his concealed weapon become visible. Tang Hao had never inquired about what he did with the pure iron, so this set of sleeve arrows was his secret. Entering the house, the fragrance of porridge wafted over, a daily routine that he had already become accustomed to. "Dad, it's time for breakfast," Tang San called out to the inner room. Strangely, Tang Hao, who usually came out at the mention of breakfast, didn't appear today. Tang San's heart tightened suddenly. Was his father sick? He hurriedly stepped into his father's room. Tang Hao wasn't in the room. It seemed like the first time in these years that he hadn't slept in. Just as Tang San was pondering what Tang Hao was up to, Tang Hao returned. San, what did you do this morning? Tang Hao asked faintly. Tang San replied, I went out to exercise. I go for a run every morning. This couldn't be considered a lie, he did go out to exercise. Oh okay, Tang Hao didn't inquire further, today you don't need to practice forging anymore. Pack your things and tomorrow, old Jack will take you to Nuoding City. A Nuoding City? What for? Tang San hadn't been to Nuoding City for about a year, when old Jack went into the city to buy things and took him along. Tang Hao glanced at him and said, don't you want to learn the abilities of Soul Masters? Old Jack will take you to the Nuoding City Intermediate Soul Master Academy to work as an intern. There, you will learn what you want to learn. Hearing his father's words, Tang San's heartbeat suddenly accelerated, a kind of indescribable excitement surging in his heart. The inability to break through the Shen Tian skill had always been his biggest concern, but the soul rings of Soul Masters seemed to offer an opportunity. Dad, why did you change your mind? Tang Hao asked back, so, are you going or not? Tang San said, but if I go, there will be no one to cook for you. By now, he understood that his father had gotten up early today to find village chief Jack. Tang Hao said coldly, do I still need you to take care of me? Just go. This is the path you chose. Saint Soul Village has one quota every year, it would be a waste not to use it. I've taught you the forging method, so you can easily find an apprenticeship at a blacksmith shop in the city. The tuition and living expenses should be enough. Although Tang Hao's words were cold, Tang San's eyes still welled up with tears. Over the past few months, despite Tang Hao's unchanged attitude towards him, as Tang Hao taught him forging, this tall and old man before him had increasingly given him the feeling of a father. While he certainly wanted to learn about Soul Masters, he also felt reluctant to leave his father. Tang Hao said, I'm letting you go to Nuoding with conditions. You can only go if you agree to my conditions. I promise, Tang San said without hesitation. Tang Hao frowned slightly. You easily agreed without even asking what my request was? As a man, what you promise must be done. Don't be someone who makes promises lightly. Tang San replied naturally, whatever you ask me to do, I promise. Dad must have my best interests at heart. Tang Hao was slightly surprised by Tang San's casual response, but it was this natural trust that caused his emotions to change slightly. Regardless of how you cultivate your soul power in the future, I want you to promise me not to add any soul rings to your hammer martial soul or even let anyone see its appearance. Don't let anyone know that you have a twin martial soul. Can you do that? Tang San hesitated for a moment. What about the blue silvergrass martial soul? Tang Hao replied, you can use and cultivate the blue silvergrass martial soul freely, and there's no problem adding any soul rings to it. Having a twin martial soul doesn't mean both martial souls need soul rings to continue cultivation. As long as one martial soul has a soul ring, the bottleneck of soul power advancement will disappear. So, from now on, I'll only use the blue silvergrass martial soul? Tang San asked. Tang Hao nodded, unless you're in a life-threatening situation, don't use that hammer. Okay, I promise you, Tang San nodded solemnly. For him, whether he cultivated his martial soul or not, used soul rings or not, was not the issue. As long as he could find a way to break through the bottleneck of the Shen Tian skill, his Tang sect concealed weapons didn't need the assistance of a martial soul. To others, perhaps the blue silvergrass was just a waste martial soul, but Tang San had never been depressed because of it. When Tang sect concealed weapons reached a certain level of proficiency, the ability to harm with flying leaves and picking flowers was not just empty talk, it was a reality. The blue silvergrass, condensed from soul power, which was essentially the inner force of the Shen Tian skill, could produce almost infinite concealed weapons as long as the inner force was sufficient. All right, let's eat, Tang Hao said. Their home was not far from poverty, and Tang San had nothing special to prepare. He just tidied up his patched clothes and that was it. However, Tang San didn't just pack his things as Tang Hao had instructed. The sound of forging still echoed in his room. Tang San understood that to be able to manufacture various concealed weapons in the future, he needed to rely on himself. It was absolutely necessary to practice the forging technique his father had taught him diligently. Until the skill in concealed weapons reached its peak, the quality of the weapons played a decisive role. Especially for super-level concealed weapons like the Buddha's Fury Tang Lotus, precision was crucial down to every millimeter. This day passed particularly long, and it was the first time Tang San felt restless since coming to this world. He was looking forward to and somewhat afraid of the outside world. Whether in Tang sect or in Saint Soul village, he had no experience of training outside. In this regard, he really wasn't much different from a child. He had been wondering what kind of excitement would the outside world bring him. After dinner, Tang Hao threw down a sentence and went out to drink as usual, seemingly no different from usual. He told Tang San not to disturb him when he left in the morning. Early the next morning, Tang San sat on a large rock at the mountaintop, holding a leaf in his hand. His eyes were shining with purple light. Perhaps because his body had become stronger recently, the purple demon eyes had progressed rapidly. With his internal energy surging, Tang San injected it into the leaf in his hand. The soft leaf suddenly straightened under the effect of the energy. Tang San lightly shook his right index and middle fingers, and the leaf spun out like slicing through the air. The leaf only flew a meter before it lost its spinning momentum because it was no longer rigid, and the effect of Tang San's internal energy disappeared once it left his fingertips. Still too weak, Tang San shook his head in frustration. It was time for him to return. Today he would leave the village, and he didn't know when he would come back to this mountaintop again. Pushing off the ground with his toes and using the strength in his calves, Tang San activated Ghost Shadow Perplexing Track and headed down the mountain. The familiar smell of porridge greeted him. This was the last time he would cook for his father before leaving, so Tang San made sure not to slack off. After checking the fire under the pot, he added some water to the porridge so that it would still be hot when his father woke up. Old Jack had already arrived, perhaps because of Tang San's departure to Nuoding City. Today, Old Jack had deliberately dressed in new clothes, looking a bit more spirited. "Xiao San, let's go. Your lazy dad won't be getting up anytime soon," Jack called out to Tang San. Tang San gestured for Jack to keep his voice down. "Grandpa, please speak softly. Dad hates being disturbed while he's sleeping." As he spoke, he pulled out a piece of burnt charcoal from the stove and wrote a few lines on the ground. Then he glanced back at his father's door with reluctance before shouldering his bag and quietly leaving with Jack. Tang San didn't know many characters in this world. He had occasionally looked at them when children in the village were taught how to write. With his knowledge from his past life, he had grasped some basic characters. As Tang Hao emerged from the room, he didn't seem sleepy at all. When he reached the door, he could still vaguely see the thin figures of Old Jack and Tang San. Tang Hao stood still until the backs of Tang San and village chief Jack had completely disappeared, still standing there for a while. As if remembering something, Tang Hao suddenly turned and walked back to the blacksmith shop, looking at the words Tang San had left on the ground. It was a simple message: "Dad, Grandpa Jack and I have left. Take care of yourself and drink less. The porridge is in the pot, don't forget to drink it." His gaze shifted from the words on the ground to the iron pot nearby. Tang Hao rushed over, swept off the lid of the pot, and directly lifted the pot with both hands. Since Tang San had just added water, the porridge in the pot hadn't boiled again, but Tang Hao ignored everything and poured the porridge into his mouth, gulping it down in big mouthfuls. In his eyes, there was a misty layer of emotion that had appeared at some point. Walking on the road, Tang San silently followed behind Old Jack, occasionally looking back towards the direction of the village. "Xiao San, are you reluctant to leave the village or reluctant to leave your old drunkard dad?" Jack patted Tang San's head and asked with a smile. "A bit of both," Tang San replied softly. Jack smiled slightly. Compared to my worthless grandsons, you're much more sensible, kid. If you were my grandson, that would be great. Tang Hao is lucky to have you. Don't think too much. The world outside is vast. In the academy, you'll make many friends and learn a lot of knowledge. When you have the title of Soul Master, the country will provide you with a monthly subsidy. By then, your family's life will improve." Tang San, having lived 2 lives, gradually regained his composure as he listened to Jack's words. He was eager for the outside world and asked, "Grandpa Jack, can you tell me about the academy? What exactly is it?" Jack smiled and said patiently, of course. The academy is a place for learning. Although I've never been there, I know quite a bit about it. Our village has one quota for a working student every year, but it's been many years since a working student went to study. Working students have many benefits such as exemption from tuition and accommodation fees. They only need to pay for their meals. You can earn food by doing some simple work at the academy like cleaning classrooms. Overall, the learning experience for working students at the academy is almost the same as free. If you had to pay to study there, it's not something poor people like us could afford. Tang-san said, Dad said that after I go to the academy, I should find a blacksmith shop to work at. Are you working at a blacksmith shop? What a joke. I think Tang Hao has really lost his mind, old Jack said irritably. You're still young and you don't even have a forging hammer. Which blacksmith shop would take you as an apprentice? Besides, being a blacksmith is not a highly regarded profession and there won't be much income from working there. Just focus on your studies at the academy. But if you can achieve something at the academy, your old drunkard father should save up some money for you. In the future, the Intermediate Soul Master Academy doesn't have working student quotas and it costs quite a bit to study there. The subsidy for Soul Masters alone won't be enough, Jack added. As Tang-san was born with a full soul power, old Jack already regarded him as a soul master. Tang-san looked at old Jack in confusion and asked, Is there also an Intermediate Soul Master Academy? What's the difference between that and the Primary Soul Master Academy? Aren't they both places to learn about soul masters? Old Jack patiently explained, Of course, they're different. The Primary Soul Master Academy teaches basic things and some cultural courses. They only accept children whose martial souls have just awakened as students, and the course is 6 years long. By the age of 12, if there's no prospect, they'll just become ordinary soul masters. But if they have good potential, most people choose to continue their education at the Intermediate Soul Master Academy. They study there until they're 18. The things taught at the Intermediate Soul Master Academy are more advanced, but the difficulty of learning is also much greater. If you can't meet the requirements of the academy, you won't be able to graduate smoothly. This is different from the Primary Soul Master Academy. Tang-san asked, If there are primary and intermediate levels, then there must also be advanced, right? Old Jack nodded, his eyes showing a hint of envy. The Advanced Soul Master Academy is out of the question. It's not something anyone can get into easily. In our Heaven Do Empire, there are only 2 Advanced Soul Master Academies. The total number of students admitted each year is less than 100. It's the cradle of future prospects. Graduates from the Advanced Soul Master Academy, whether it's recognized by the country or the Spirit Hall, will be sought after. They'll be directly granted the title of nobility. A nobility? That sounds like excellent conditions, Tang-san exclaimed in surprise. Of course. Soul Masters are the noblest profession, and Advanced Soul Masters even more so. They are all talents. Therefore, for us commoners who want to rise quickly, becoming an Advanced Soul Master is obviously the best shortcut. However, for those born into ordinary families, how many of them can have such excellent martial souls? Even if they do, without the support of a great family, it's very difficult to graduate from the Advanced Soul Master Academy. But why would graduation require assistance from others? Tang-san was puzzled. Old Jack sighed, That's the difference between the poor and the rich, the commoners and the nobles. The requirements for graduating from the Primary Soul Master Academy are simple. As long as your martial soul reaches level 10 and you obtain a soul ring under the guidance of the Academy's teachers, advancing to the title of Soul Master is easy. This isn't difficult, any child whose martial soul awakens can achieve it. They say that reaching level 10 in soul power, from Soul Apprentice to Soul Master, is the easiest. But it's different at the Intermediate Soul Master Academy. To graduate from there, your martial soul must reach level 20 and you must obtain a second soul ring to become a Grand Soul Master. Going from level 10 to level 20 is something many soul masters can't achieve in their lifetime. Moreover, after reaching level 20, if you want to obtain a soul ring, you must rely on your own strength to hunt soul beasts for it. That's extremely dangerous. If you come from a noble family with family warriors accompanying you, the danger is much lower. But for soul masters like us, born into commoner families, we can only rely on ourselves. The graduation requirements for the Advanced Soul Master Academy are even more stringent. You must pass level 30 and obtain a third soul ring to ascend from Grand Soul Master to Soul Dolua. Crossing level 30 is considered a threshold. Those who cross it can be called powerful soul masters and true nobles. But if you can't cross it, it's difficult. Moreover, it seems that there are some restrictions on obtaining a soul ring after level 30. You should learn about the specifics at the academy. Anyway, it seems that less than 1/3 of the students from the Advanced Soul Master Academy can actually graduate. Listening to old Jack's words, Tang San gained some basic impressions of the teachings about soul masters on the Dolua continent. Grandpa Jack, didn't you say there are 10 titles for soul masters? Graduates from the Advanced Soul Master Academy become Soul Dolua, but what about the titles beyond that? How can they be obtained? Old Jack smiled bitterly. How would I know? Titles beyond Soul Dolua are for great figures. Like the soul saint who appeared in our village, he was supported directly by the country. I've heard that as soul masters continue to cultivate, it becomes harder and more dangerous. How many can really reach the top like the Dolua titles? Even now, I can't be sure if there are such existences in our Heaven Do Empire or the Star Luo Empire. Old Jack's understanding of soul masters was only superficial. His explanations weren't detailed, and Tang San understood that he would have to explore these topics slowly in the academy. Especially about soul beasts and soul rings. From Saint Soul Village to Nuoding City wasn't far. After half a day's journey and a simple meal on the way, in the afternoon, they could already see the city walls in the distance. Although Nuoding City wasn't a large city, its walls were solidly built because it was close to the border of the Heaven Do Empire. Like other passers-by, Tang San and Old Jack underwent inspection and entered Nuoding City. Xiao San. Grandpa will leave after sending you to the academy. You must listen to the teachers in the academy and never leave without permission. When the semester ends, Grandpa Jack will come to pick you up. It'll be around the New Year then. It was Tang San's first time leaving home, so he felt a bit nervous. He subconsciously asked, Grandpa Jack, are you leaving so soon? Old Jack smiled bitterly. We poor folks can't afford to stay in hotels. You must strive hard. When Grandpa sees you next time, I hope you've become a soul master. Our Saint Soul Village will be proud of you. The Nuoding Primary Soul Master Academy was located in the west of Nuoding City. After inquiring several times with passers-by, Old Jack finally brought Tang San here. From afar, they could already see a tall archway. The archway was 20 meters wide and about 10 meters high, all built of solid rock. There were 2 iron gates below, dark and made of high-quality wrought iron, as Tang San could tell at a glance. Through the iron gates, they could see a winding path leading inside, with tall trees on both sides. In the center of the archway were 4 big characters, Nuoding Academy. Just from the entrance of the academy, one could see how important the profession of Soul Master was in the Dolua continent. And this was only a primary Soul Master Academy. As Old Jack and Tang San approached the gate, they were immediately stopped by a young man on duty. What are you here for? Is this a place where you country folk can come? Old Jack's attire, which was considered decent in Saint Soul Village, looked completely rustic in Nuoding City. The guard's eyes carried a hint of disdain. Lao Jieke hurriedly smiled and said, Young man, we're from Saint Soul Village. This child is the work-study student we sent this year. You see, what procedures do we need to go through? The gatekeeper frowned and said in a strange tone, Can a grass nest produce a golden phoenix? Someone from a small village has soul power? It's been many years since the academy accepted work-study students. Are you sure you're not imposters? Although Old Jack was feeling a surge of anger, he still reluctantly took out the proof issued by the Spirit Hall steward, Suyuntu, last time and handed it to the gatekeeper. The gatekeeper took the proof and examined it closely. A blue-silver grass martial soul? An already innate full soul power? Hilarious. This is truly a big joke. I've been working as a gatekeeper at the academy for 4 years and I've never heard of a student with innate full soul power. This kid's martial soul is blue silver grass and he's already full soul power? I think this proof from the spirit hall must be forged by you. You. Even if Jack had a good temper, he couldn't bear it at this point. You're intentionally causing trouble. Fine, wait here. I'll go find the steward of the soul hall. Xiao San, let's go. With that, Jack turned and walked towards the city. The proof from the soul hall was obviously not fake and the gatekeeper knew it. However, people who came to deliver new students usually showed a bit more courtesy, especially those from commoner families. There's a saying, the king of hell is easy to deal with, but the little devils are troublesome. Old Jack, being from a rural area, didn't understand these subtleties. The gatekeeper felt a bit uneasy. If people from the soul hall really came, it wasn't something he could handle. Of course, he also believed that people from the soul hall wouldn't come to the academy to question two villagers like them. Feeling frustrated, he couldn't help but say, still talking about Saint Soul Village? I think it's more like Beggar Village. What did you say? Old Jack turned around abruptly. The gatekeeper's words touched his biggest pride. In the past, he had quarreled with Tang because of this, and now this gatekeeper, an outsider to the village, was even more unbearable. He took a few steps back and then came back, glaring angrily at the gatekeeper. The gatekeeper was startled by old Jack's imposing manner and took a step back. But he quickly realized and inwardly cursed himself. He was just an old man, what was there to be afraid of? What? Can't accept it? I said you came from Beggar Village, is there anything wrong with that? Look at this poor kid, his clothes are all patched up. I think you'd better go begging somewhere. Our Nuoding Academy is not a charity house. Get lost, get lost. As he spoke, the gatekeeper raised his left hand and pushed towards old Jack's chest, intending to drive the two away. Just as old Jack was overwhelmed by anger, suddenly, there was a slender figure between them. With his left arm raised, he barely reached the gatekeeper's hand. His left hand pushed the gatekeeper's left hand aside, while his right foot stepped forward quickly, landing behind the gatekeeper's left foot. At the same time, his right hand lifted up and, together with his left hand, pushed the gatekeeper's hand downward. Originally, this palm strike was supposed to hit the bend of the gatekeeper's left arm, making it impossible for him to exert force. However, the person who performed it was a bit shorter, so he could only catch the gatekeeper's wrist. His movements were very fast, and his body leaned forward as both hands pushed the gatekeeper's left hand away. The gatekeeper suddenly felt a foot behind his left foot. Although it was not big, it was enough to make him stumble. With the force on his abdomen, he tripped and fell to the ground with a dull sound. Xiao San you. Old Jack stared dumbfoundedly at the person standing in front of him. It was Tang San who made the move. What he used wasn't even a Tang clan secret technique, but just the most basic move from his original world's martial arts, pushing window and gazing at the moon. Of course, given his size, it was bound to be deformed. He couldn't catch the opponent's arm bend, and the hand that was supposed to push the opponent's chest landed on his stomach instead. But the result was the same. Although Tang San was small, his strength was not small at all. The hammer training he had done over the past few months hadn't been in vain. Even without using the mysterious heaven skill, he still managed to knock down the gatekeeper in one go. You brat, you're asking for death. Being pushed down by a child was extremely embarrassing for the gatekeeper. In his anger and haste, he got up from the ground and rushed towards Tang San. Oh, enough, stop it. Just then, a hoarse voice sounded, stopping the gatekeeper's movement. The gatekeeper was first stunned, then his angry face immediately turned into flattery. The change was so fast it was unimaginable. He nodded and bowed to the incoming person. Master, you're back. Tang San turned to look. A middle-aged man of medium build, slightly thin, had appeared beside them at some point. He looked to be about 40 or 50 years old, with black short hair parted to the side. His appearance was very ordinary, but there was a special aura about him. With his hands behind his back, he exuded a lazy and decadent vibe. The gatekeeper's behavior showed that this middle-aged man's status in the academy was definitely not low, not to mention the title of master. He glanced at the gatekeeper Askew but ignored him, turning to Old Jack. "Sir, can you show me the proof from the soul hall?" Old Jack, being a village head, could read people's expressions. From the gatekeeper's expression, he could tell that the middle-aged man standing before them had a high status in the academy, not to mention the title of master. He quickly handed over the proof. The master looked at the proof, then turned his gaze to Tang San. After sizing him up, for some reason, although the master's gaze wasn't sharp, Tang San felt like he was being seen through. "The proof is indeed authentic. Sir, I apologize on behalf of the academy for what happened just now. Please leave this child to me."